dangerous. So it got stripped. 1970, Dr. Weinberg and his partner here sought new funding for a full-scale 100 megawatt model, which would be 13 times larger. And the key thing is, Weinberg believed by the early 80s, private industry could begin developing this technology commercially throughout the United States. The petroleum era would be over by the beginning of the 21st century. The economies have changed little since that time. It's still today, and I footnote and so forth, that to construct one of these would still be 1/10 the cost of any of the technologies we have right now. And that's the link to where that is. So based on some of the phase 2 test results, they were so amazing, so outstanding, that the government support wouldn't be necessary on this. The few industries that heard about this said, we don't need your government. We'll fund it ourselves, and it's safe, so we don't have to worry about all these issues. All private industry needed was permission from the Atomic Energy Commission, the AEC, to proceed. The AEC indicated they required approval from the Congressional Joint Committee on Atomic Energy. And that will take a little time.
Do we have it yet?
Yeah.
So, in one of the greatest disappearing acts in the United States, it occurred December 31st, 1974. The Atomic Energy Commission disappeared. The Congressional Joint Committee on Atomic Energy vanished. How often have you heard of public federal bureaucracies disappearing? It's unheard of. Whoever did this was brilliant. And Oak Ridge National Laboratories vanished. As was foretold in 1946 by Ice Content, Oppenheimer to Ayn Rand, they weren't going to let this stuff out. And he was concerned they were going the nuclear bomb route. Oppenheimer's work, are we going to survive? Is mankind going to survive? But God damn it, if it does, I'd like a message or something that sophisticated people later can figure out what happened. So we have the urban legend of the mighty oak tree up on a ridge being struck down by lightning. Thanks again to the Freedom of Information Act, here's what my investigation showed. That, and here's a link to some of the stuff. The chemical division of Oak Ridge National Laboratories, which spearheaded the thorium research since 1945, was suddenly struck down, uprooted, and disbanded. The orders came from key politicians and staffers inside the Joint Committee on Atomic Energy and the Atomic Energy Commission. In early 1973, all the chemical division research and development of thorium was suspended, and they were ordered to trash or destroy all information on it. There's videos of the employees that are still alive talking about that. Kirk Sorensen has some amazing interviews. They're trying to get hold of these people before they pass on. And some of them have passed since these interviews, but the people are still brilliant and sharp that they were talking to. Thousands of Oak Ridge associates were either dismissed or redeployed to other projects by early 1974. Why didn't we hear about this? The Cold War's going on. If anyone says anything, they're in jail. It's kind of like, I was engineering physics, but I always wanted to be a historian, but I felt there was future in physics. So I went that route, figured I could read history on the side. So I always loved Greek and Roman history. Boy, this reminded me of Carthage and Rome. They're going to destroy it totally. We're going to teach the other laboratories because John Galt at the Oak Ridge Laboratories kept flipping the bird to these congressmen who thought they knew more, and he wouldn't get in line like the other labs were. The division, which was overseen by GALT research for decades, was dismantled almost brick by brick. President Kennedy's thorium technology was padlocked behind a deep, dark tunnel vault, ordered forgotten. It wasn't even prepped for the future. They just wanted to close down immediately. And there's some reasons for that, but that's going to come out in a book later. A fraudulent document, WASH 1222, was suddenly appeared in the official files at Oak Ridge, indicating the GALT chemical experiments had been a failure. It was a waste of time. They're saying, you know, and here's the report. It would take 20 or 30 years to figure out it was a fraudulent report slipped in there. But here's why. And this is the reference on the internet of where that information is, but it had been secretly entered into the file September 21st, 1972, around the time Dr. Weinberg's firing. So there's a lot of chaos going on, and now some things are starting to be substituted in. The document falsely concluded that this failed thorium technology should not be pursued in the future if anything happened to a light water reactor. If it exploded, if it killed 20 or 30,000 people and cost $250 billion, and people want to go back and figure out is there some other technology, don't look at the thorium GALT reactor because it's no good. Dr. Weinberg's reason for dismissal was because he repeatedly said, of the two technologies, my GALT reactor is the best thing there is. There will be an accident someday with the light water reactor because of all the explosive pressures and so forth. It's just statistically going to happen. He couldn't figure out why they wouldn't believe him. The firing of Weinberg was in spite of knowing he was right about safety issues. A book came out in 1982 called Cult of the Atom, where a guy subpoenaed the information from the Atomic Energy Commission because he kept telling them there's going to be problems, and they said, no, there isn't. But what was discovered, there was correspondence going back and forth. They knew there were problems with the light water reactor. My contention is they wanted an accident to occur eventually to end the competitor, the young nuclear industry. So the first error of, this is a book by Alvin Weinberg, or who I contend is GALT in referencing this. I won't get into specifics here just to move along, but just one thing, and this is what Alvin couldn't figure out that was being said. He says, if you have one reactor, there's one chance in 10,000 that there'd be a big accident. So that's one chance in 10,000 years. And he's saying that is a problem. And the politicians said, hell no, I'm not going to be here 1,000 years. But what if you have 1,000 of those same reactors? Now the probability could happen in 1 year. They were, while Alvin Weinberg is trying to get the GALT reactor activated, certain politicians and people are pushing as hard as possible. They want as many of the light water reactors out there as possible, because I contend the statistics is the more they get out there, and they're cutting corners on the safety because of the high costs, they want an accident. So I'm going to zip by this just to make sure we stay time for questions. So we get to reactor number 44 that goes on in 1974. It happens to be the 3 Mile Island reactor. That one is now under construction. So there's the time bomb that's going to cripple the industry down the road. And so the statistics, it's in your literature. They were up to 29,000 megawatts of power. All this works out that statistically there should be an accident within 6 or 7 years, and that's what happened. Alvin or John Galt was correct. And this is because I'm giving this presentation in Maine before the state senate and in the House. Now, Here's how they portray, to me, John Galt's nemesis. Chet Holyfield, master legislator, nuclear statesman, brilliant individual who knows the industry. Yet if you look for him on the internet, he was the most powerful man in Washington, D.C. from 1947 to 1974. He controlled all the purse strings. He was chairman of the he was chairman of the Joint Committee on Atomic Energy that oversaw the Atomic Energy Commission. He was, in my opinion, John Galt's major nemesis. So you have this brilliant individual that I think they should have bumped him off after he suddenly resigned, because they didn't understand videotapes and stuff, because you're going to hear this brilliant individual in a few moments. Neither American public or Congress as a whole would ever be informed about the suspicious dismantling of the technology. 3 Mile Island, as we mentioned. Before the nuclear implodes in 1979, the AC will have had built 128 of these light water reactors. So statistically, it's getting
I early
closer.
learned to take care of myself because my father was a tailor and a cleaner and presser, and he taught me sometimes at the end of a stick how to do that.
Yes,
And
well, you had a good start in life.
I had a good start in life.
And as a matter of fact, the coincidence is that you and Harry Truman got a somewhat similar start in life.
Well, yes, and I might tell you a short story about that. I was the honored guest at a homecoming in my hometown of Montebello, California, after I'd been in Congress a while, and one of the local Toastmasters, who prided himself upon his ability to handle a meeting, he made a little speech, and he said, now, our congressman has 3 things in common with President Truman. This was during the time that Harry Truman was president. He said, they both married girls from Missouri, and he said, they both were in the haberdasher business before they were elected to Congress. And then they were both elected to Congress. Now, he said there's one distinction between the two, however. He said Congressman Holyfield made a success in business and Harry Truman went bankrupt. And my reply to that was, yes, but he became president of the United States, and I only got as far as a United States representative. And
That is the guy who fired John Galt and told him he didn't know what he was talking about. By the way, he had gone bankrupt too. He was working, servicing the oil industry, and they helped him out during the Depression. So that to me is the looter that changed the history of this planet right now. A clothing salesman. And what I show later is Truman also, they were both picked by the same puppet master. But that's another story. So we'll continue on now. Oh, here's Holyfield with Richard Nixon. They're getting on a plane to talk about nuclear energy. I contend, and again, this will be in another presentation, is you would think Nixon is the boss and Holyfield is the lower individual, but Holyfield and Nixon were both brought in by the puppet master. Holyfield was his #1 puppet. Another congressman was too, and Nixon is actually ticked off here because he's being told by this congressman what to do, and he actually changes sides later. And that's when they set him up for Watergate. He should have been thrown out for a lot of things, but when he started to fight the elites, then they turned on him. He was still a nasty guy, but he wanted to change at the end, and there's some amazing stories that I've uncovered where he was trying to do that. but you don't cross the people that got you there over 40 years. So we learned in '82 the AC repeatedly granted waivers allowing consulting firms to cut safety corners. Further safeguards cut. And some of the stuff here you'll see in the literature, it's footnoted, and it actually comes from Chet Holyfield's book. So here we have January 1, 1975. The one thing in common between GALT Chemical Reactors, Oak Ridge National Laboratories, AEC and JEC is they no longer exist. And it was actually through a secret act in Congress over Christmas holidays. All that happened to Oak Ridge National Laboratories, these same politicians, once they had shut everything down, they were all told to resign. And as Chet Holyfield's resigning, the staffers who had been feeding him what to do all these years decided, we're going to change the name of Oak Ridge National Laboratories to Chet Holyfield National Laboratories. I mean, it's the Romans not only tearing Carthage apart, but peeing on it. So anyhow, so this is what's going on. So another 26 years would pass before Kirk Sorensen would rediscover America's greatest asset. And Kirk was baffled by that, but he quit NASA and started promoting thorium that we need to go this direction. So you'll see information on it all over the internet. So here's, again, with my research, things I was figuring out on what's going on. How were they able to do it? But the year that they shut all this down, these things were going on. Nixon resigns, OPEC, Aramco, the Yom Kippur Wars. I contend in the research I've done that this wasn't coincidence. As Nixon's trying to figure out a way to break free of the puppet master, he actually hired someone into the Atomic Energy Commission to figure out what's going on in there that they're scared of. And Dixie Ray Lee was the woman who was governor later of Washington State, who has a photographic memory, an amazing book by her. She's trying to figure out some of these things because Nixon put her there, but she could never get together with him because all these other things were going on. If they had gotten together, they might have pieced it together, but it wasn't to happen. So let me zip by this. So I want to give you 4 minutes here of this gentleman, Why Nations Fail. He's going to talk about what makes a good country that will succeed versus one that would